It was a bright afternoon in the royal palace of Ndah Kingdom. The air was filled with the scent of freshly cooked jollof rice and fried plantain, as the royal cooks prepared for yet another feast in honor of the visiting princess from Oloran village. Prince Fola stood at the entrance of the grand hall, his heart pounding. He had already met 5 princesses from different villages, but none had agreed to marry him. This time, he prayed things would be different. The princess, a stunning young lady in a beautifully embroidered wrapper, stood before him with a gentle smile. The king and queen sat on their royal thrones, watching anxiously. Prince Fola took a deep breath and greeted her, "Welcome to Ndah Kingdom, beautiful princess. I am honored to meet you." The moment he spoke, the princess's smile froze. A strange, awful smell hit her nose like rotten fish mixed with decayed onions. Her eyes widened in horror, and before anyone could react, she let out a loud scream and ran out of the palace. Everyone in the hall gasped. The queen buried her face in her palms, and the king sighed deeply, shaking his head. One of the palace guards whispered to his friend, "Oh, this smell can wake the ancestors from their graves." Prince Fola clenched his fist and stormed out of the palace, his heart shattered once again. The elders of Ndah Kingdom gathered in the palace later that evening. The king, with deep wrinkles of worry on his forehead, spoke. "As you all know, our tradition is clear: Prince Fola cannot ascend the throne unless he is married. But every maiden we bring runs away because of his problem." An elder sighed. "We cannot break the law. No marriage, no kinship." The queen wiped her tears. "We have tried everything. We have brought the best traditional healers, but none could cure his mouth odor." One of the elders shook his head. "Then what shall we do? If the prince cannot marry, the throne will remain empty, and our enemies will see us as weak." Silence filled the hall. Everyone knew the fate of the kingdom was at stake. But no one had a solution. Few years later, the great palace of Ndah stood in the heart of the village, its towering walls holding centuries of history and power. Inside the grand hall, the air was thick with tension. The Council of Elders, a group of 10 men dressed in flowing traditional robes, sat in a semicircle before the aged King Adidran. The king, weary and frail, leaned heavily on his line-carved staff. His queen, Olifank, sat beside him, worry deeply etched into her face. The head of the council, Elder Bade, cleared his throat and spoke in a deep, commanding voice. "Your Majesty, we have come again, and this time, we demand an answer. It has been years now that we demand the prince to get a wife so as to be able to succeed you when you join your ancestors. The throne can't be empty for long. It is an abomination." Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. Elder Derojeye, the oldest among them, stroked his grey beard and added, "By the sacred laws of our land, no man can ascend the throne unless he is married. Your son, Prince Fola, must take a wife immediately. The kingdom cannot be left without a ruler for long." King Adidran sighed deeply. His frail hands tightened around his staff. "I am not blind to the ways of our ancestors," he said, his voice laced with exhaustion. "I know the law. But tell me, elders, do you not also know the troubles of my son?" The room fell silent. "Fola is not refusing to marry out of stubbornness," the king continued. "We have searched far and wide. We have gone to neighboring villages. We have spoken to the wealthiest families. But the moment he opens his mouth to speak, they all flee in terror. What do you want me to do?" Queen Olifank wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. She had spent many nights awake, praying to the gods, hoping that a solution would come. But Elder Bade was not satisfied. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, we cannot continue to wait. If your son cannot find a wife, then he cannot be king. And if we have no king, then the throne must be given to another." Gasps erupted from the royal guard standing at the entrance. The queen's eyes widened in horror. "You dare to suggest such a thing," she asked, her voice trembling. Elder Bede did not flinch. I only speak the truth. The kingdom must not be without a ruler. The king slammed his staff on the ground, silencing the murmurs. Enough, he commanded. I will not let my son be stripped of his birthright. I promise you, elders, I will find a solution. Elder Dorogeia let out a slow sigh. Then you must act fast, Your Majesty. The people are growing restless. If the prince does not marry within the next moon cycle, the council will be forced to act. With that, the elders stood and slowly left the palace, their heavy footsteps echoing in the grand hall. That night, the king and queen sat alone in their chamber, their faces filled with worry. What do we do now? Queen Oliphant whispered. They are right. The throne cannot remain empty. King Adidran shook his head. We have already tried everything. The best traditional healers in the land have failed us. No medicine has worked. No charms have removed the odor. Even the greatest diviners say it is a trial from the gods. The queen placed a gentle hand on her husband's shoulder. Maybe we are looking in the wrong places. Instead of seeking a noble bride, let us open the doors to the common people. Perhaps a woman with a kind heart will see beyond his affliction. The king considered her words. It is worth trying. But who will be willing? The queen sighed. We must pray that fate brings the right person to him. Little did they know, fate had already set things in motion. The next day, town criers were sent to every corner of Ndah and the neighboring villages, announcing that the royal family was willing to consider any young maiden for marriage to the prince. But instead of excitement, the village erupted in laughter and mockery. At the village square, a group of young women gathered under a large baobab tree, gossiping and giggling. Did you hear? A girl named Ronk laughed. The prince is still looking for a wife. Who in her right mind would marry him? Another girl, Kemi, wrinkled her nose. Imagine waking up next to him every day and smelling that horrible stench. Oh, it is better to remain single forever. The other girls burst into laughter. Sod, one of the more outspoken girls, folded her arms and smirked. I heard that the queen herself is begging people to consider him. But let them keep begging. No amount of riches will make me marry a man whose breath smells like a dead animal. More laughter erupted. Meanwhile, Prince Fola, who had been walking past the square, overheard their words. He froze, his heart sinking into his stomach. He clenched his fist and walked away quickly, his vision blurred with tears. He had tried to be strong. He had tried to hold on to hope. But now, the shame was too much. That was the day he decided he would rather die than continue living in rejection and humiliation. The sky was grey, heavy with thick clouds that threatened to rain. Deep in the forest, away from the village of Ndah, Prince Fola sat on a fallen tree, staring at the sharp dagger in his hands. His heart was heavy, his eyes swollen from days of sleeplessness. What is the use of life if I am only meant to be mocked and rejected? He whispered to himself. Every woman he had ever approached had run from him. The pain of rejection was too much to bear. He could no longer count the times he had seen the disgust in their eyes, the way they covered their noses or turned away. His father, the king, had passed away weeks ago. Tradition demanded that he must be married before he could ascend the throne. But what was the point? He had searched for a wife far and wide, yet no one wanted to be with him. Even after seeing the best traditional physicians and herbalists, no cure had been found. The shame was unbearable. He took a deep breath and tightened his grip on the dagger. His hands trembled as he lifted it to his chest, ready to end it all. But just as the blade touched his skin, a desperate voice rang through the trees. No. Stop. The voice was soft yet urgent, like a plea from the heavens. Prince Fola turned sharply to see a young woman running toward him. She was panting, her wrapper slightly loosened from the speed of her movement. Her eyes were wide with fear. She reached him and snatched the dagger from his hands before he could react, throwing it far into the bushes. "What are you doing?" she cried, her voice shaking. Fola stared at her, confused. Who are you? And why do you care?" The girl placed her hands on her knees, catching her breath before responding. "My name is Eo. And I may not know you, but I cannot watch you take your own life." The prince's face darkened. "Why should it matter to you? Do you not know who I am?" Eo looked at him closely, then gasped. "The prince. The son of the late king." Fola nodded bitterly. "Yes. And the most rejected man in all the lands. Even the lowest of maidens would rather marry a crippled beggar than be with me. I am tired, Eo. Tired of being mocked. Tired of being laughed at. Tired of being alone." Tears streamed down his face. He turned away, his shoulders shaking. Without thinking, Eo dropped to her knees beside him. Her own eyes glistened with tears. "You are not alone," she whispered. Fola turned to her, surprised by her words. She took a deep breath before speaking again. "I, too, have known pain, rejection, and loneliness." She wiped her eyes. "I lost my parents to a tragic fire in our village. With no family left, I had to leave my home. I walked for days, searching for a place where I could start again. But even in my suffering, I never thought to end my own life. Because, what if tomorrow is better than today?" Fola looked at her, speechless. Eo reached for his hand, gently holding it. "I don't know why the gods allowed you to suffer this way. But I do know that taking your own life is not the answer. You are a prince. No, you are a king in waiting. Your story is not over." Tears fell freely from Fola's eyes. For the first time in years, he felt something warm inside him, something he could not explain. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound being the rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. As time passed, the tension between them eased. Eo sat on a fallen log beside Fola, the two of them staring into the distance as the sun began to set. Eo turned to him. "Prince Fola, may I ask you something?" He nodded, wiping his face. "Why do you let the words of others define you?" He sighed. "Because their words hold power. When every person you meet turns away from you in disgust, it becomes hard not to believe that you are unworthy." Eo thought for a moment before speaking. "But have you ever asked yourself if their opinions truly matter?" Fola looked at her, puzzled. She continued, "If a blind man tells you that the sun does not shine, does it mean the sun has stopped shining?" The prince blinked. Eo smiled gently. "What I mean is, just because others cannot see your worth does not mean you have none. You have allowed their judgments to control your mind, your happiness, and now, your will to live. But I see you differently, Fola. Not as a prince with a problem, but as a man with a heart that longs to be understood." For a moment, Fola did not know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever cared enough to try. He let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. "You are different, Eo." She chuckled softly. "Maybe I am. Or maybe I am just like you, someone who has known pain but chooses to hope." A comfortable silence fell between them. Finally, Fola stood up. "Come. Let me take you to Ndah village. You said you were searching for a place to start again. I will make sure you are safe." Eo hesitated. "Are you sure?" Fola smiled for the first time in a long while. "You saved my life today, Eo. The least I can do is help you build yours." With that, they left the forest together, walking side by side, not as strangers, but as two souls who had found solace in each other. Prince Fola took Eo to Ndah village and helped her find shelter. He visited her often, bringing food and gifts. One evening, as they sat outside under the moonlight, he asked, Eo, why have you never run away from me like others do? She smiled warmly. Because I believe no one is perfect. You are kind, and you deserve to be loved. Prince Fola was stunned. No one had ever said those words to him before. He took a deep breath. One bright afternoon, Eo walked through the bustling market of Ndah village, carrying a basket of yams. She greeted the traders warmly as she passed. Oh, Eo. Our new villager, said Aya Ifon, the palm oil seller. How is your work going? Very well, Aya. I am grateful, Eo responded with a smile. Just then, a group of young ladies, including Monarchy, the most beautiful girl in the village, gathered nearby, giggling among themselves. They pointed at Eo and whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Can you believe it? Monarchy said, folding her arms. The prince, the same man that all the maidens ran away from, is now following this orphan girl everywhere. Another lady, Sua, added, maybe her nose is blocked. How else can she stand that smell? They burst into laughter, drawing the attention of other market women. Eo heard every word, but she kept her head high and continued walking. Inside, her heart ached. As she turned a corner, she almost bumped into Prince Fola, who had come to see her. He saw the look in her eyes. Eo, what's wrong? He asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. Nothing, my prince. Nothing at all. But he knew better. Later that evening, as the sun painted the sky with orange and purple hues, Prince Fola walked into the village square, where many of the young ladies were gathered. He cleared his throat. I have something to say. They turned, some rolling their eyes, others smirking. I have heard your whispers, your laughter. I know what you say about me and Eo. His voice was calm but firm. Monarchy stepped forward, arms crossed. And what do you expect, my prince? That we should pretend not to notice. A whole prince, in love with a girl who doesn't mind his condition. The ladies chuckled. Prince Fola took a deep breath. Tell me, Monarchy, and all of you who once came to my father's palace, why did you run from me? Silence. He smiled bitterly. Because you only saw my flaw. But Eo, she saw my heart. The ladies shifted uncomfortably. Do not mock a woman who loves with her heart instead of her eyes. Because while you laugh, she is building a future beside a king. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the girl speechless. That night, Eo sat outside her small hut, staring at the stars. Prince Fola arrived as he always did, bringing roasted corn wrapped in leaves. Eo, he said softly, sitting beside her, tell me the truth. Are you ashamed of being with me? Tears welled in her eyes. No, my prince. I am proud to be with you. But sometimes, the whispers, the laughter, it hurts. He took her hand in his. Then let me tell you something. You are the only person in this entire world who has ever accepted me as I am. If I had to choose between 1,000 women who look at me with disgust and one woman who looks at me with love, I would choose you 1,000 times. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw not a rejected prince, but a man with a heart full of love. A few weeks later, the annual festival of the new moon was held. It was a grand celebration, with drumming, dancing, and feasting. When Prince Fola and Eo arrived together, hand in hand, the whispers turned into loud mockery. Sua nudged Monarchy. Look at them. The prince is walking proudly with his little orphan girl. Another girl, Funmi, laughed. Maybe she drinks bitter herbs to block her sense of smell. A group of young men, trying to impress the ladies, started mimicking Prince Fola. One held his nose and pretended to faint. Another waved his hand in front of his nose, exclaiming, "The smell. It is too much. Someone save me." Laughter erupted across the crowd. Eo squeezed the prince's hand, her heart pounding. "Maybe we should go," she whispered. Prince Fola, jaw clenched, stood his ground. He looked around and then spoke loudly so that all could hear. "Today, you laugh at me. But I promise you, one day, you will bow before me as your king." The laughter stopped. A strange silence fell over the crowd. He turned to Eo and smiled. "Let's go, my love." Hand in hand, they walked away, leaving the mockers behind. One evening, in front of the entire village, Prince Fola stood in the marketplace. Eo stood beside him, confused. He turned to her, took her hand, and went down on one knee. Gasps filled the air. "Eo, you saved my life. You accepted me when no one else would. Will you be my wife?" Eo covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, my prince. Yes." The villagers murmured in shock. The same young ladies who had laughed at Eo stood frozen. Monarchy clenched her fist. "I should have married him when I had the chance." Sua whispered, "How could he choose her over us?" But it was too late. The night of the wedding was magical. The entire kingdom gathered to celebrate. Drums beat loudly, dancers swayed, and the elders chanted blessings over the new couple. That night, in their chambers, as Prince Fola spoke to Eo, something strange happened. A sharp, tingling sensation filled his mouth. He coughed violently, and suddenly, a thick black liquid oozed from his mouth onto the floor. The foul smell vanished. Eo gasped. "My prince. Your mouth, it no longer smells." Prince Fola touched his lips in shock. He exhaled deeply, and the air around him remained fresh and clean. The curse had been broken. The next morning, when the queen and the elders came to greet them, they were stunned. The news spread like wildfire. Monarchy and the other young ladies who had mocked him wept bitterly. "If only I had stayed," Monarchy cried. "I would have been queen." Sua whispered, "We laughed at her, but she is now the most honored woman in the kingdom." But their regrets were in vain. And so, the prince who was once mocked became a great king, proving that love, not beauty or perfection, is what truly makes a person worthy. After his father passed, Prince Fola became King Fola the Great. He ruled with wisdom and kindness, and his name spread across many lands. The young ladies who once mocked him regretted their actions. But it was too late. Eo remained by his side, the queen who had accepted him when no one else would. And so, King Fola and Queen Eo ruled the land with love, proving that true beauty lies not in perfection, but in acceptance and kindness. Moral lessons. True love sees beyond flaws. Eo loved Prince Fola not because he was perfect, but because she believed in him. Rejection is not the end. Prince Fola thought his life was over, but his greatest blessing came when he least expected it. Mocking others can lead to regret. Those who mocked the prince later wished they had treated him better. Every problem has a solution, even if it takes time. Prince Fola's problem seemed hopeless, but in the end, he was healed. And that, my friend, is the tale of Prince Fola, the king that no one wanted until love found him. Kindly like and subscribe to this channel for more interesting African folktales. God bless you.